Transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student experience.
The transfer student
Thank you
experience.
for taking the time to talk with me today.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
So I transferred to USC in fall of 2018. I came from Pasadena City College, a local community college in LA, and I was studying computer science, but my community college didn't have a computer science major. They just had like an information technology major with like a specialty in programming, which was like the closest thing they'll put me in. And even then the counselors like discouraged me from like pursuing it because you're like, you're a girl, you don't want to do this, right? Which was a little annoying, but beside the point. So I applied in February of 2018 that year then after doing like all the other applications for other UCs. And yeah, and I'm still studying computer science now. I'm finally a senior, like transferring in with junior level credit. So I'm at like, I don't know, 130 units or something right now. I might have to like apply to appeal to like get more financial aid next semester. So we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, but that's basically how I got here now, yeah.
Awesome. I'm curious to know what you sort of been doing to try and just keep your sanity during this lockdown time.
I guess for me, I actually really enjoy quarantine because I'm a commuter student. I come from West LA. So the best part was not having to drive to school every day, which meant like waking up like an hour and a half early so I could get ready and drive to school in either half an hour to an hour traffic and then repeat again whenever I left campus, you know? So for me, for the first couple of weeks, it was great because I was like, oh my God, I can actually like wake up 10 minutes before our class starts and like attend class. Like, this is great. This is really fun. Like, I was really enjoying that. Most of my hobbies are already indoors. So for me, it didn't feel too different at first. But after being in for so long, I'm like getting a little antsy myself. Because what I usually do in my free time is go out to try new food at different restaurants all over LA. And I'm not really able to do that right now since most of them are closed. So right now it's mostly just like cooking and baking a lot, trying out new things. Like I made donuts for the first time, which was really fun. And like an all day kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun. And I still have like some friends and stuff in the area that we can kind of like meet, social distance and stuff. So it doesn't get too lonely, but still pretty bad.
And you said computer science, right? Are you doing any sort of cool side projects, web app development, any sort of thing like that?
Not particularly, actually. Mostly because like the schoolwork itself keeps me busy enough that I don't want to spend my free time doing that too. I know some students are really passionate about like doing like programming in their free time on top of their schoolwork. I'm just not really one of those people. And at the same time, like you do fall into like the trap of like comparing yourself all the time since like transferring to a place like USC where everyone is like top tier, like students from high school or other colleges, and so you kind of like want to compare yourself to all these people who are achieving so much, but at the same time like everyone moves at their own pace, and I think it's okay to kind of like take it as you will.
For sure. No, I did mechanical engineering and I can understand like if you're doing maths every day, you're not exactly wanting to do it when you have some time to yourself. What career goals are you aiming towards? Is it working for a company? Is it starting your own? What does life after college look like for you?
I guess for me, I'm interested in working somewhere, probably hopefully not too corporate. I already interned at Cisco, not this past summer, but in summer 2019. And that was a little overwhelming since I was still like pretty new to like working as like a software engineer. And I didn't really have much to contribute, it felt like, or I was being held back by like the niche field my team was working on. And so I was like, well, there's not much else for me to kind of like push into. There wasn't other projects for me to pick up. Cisco was such a big company, it was easy to get lost in. So for me, I think I want to work somewhere like kind of smaller, maybe not startup size, but a little bigger than startup size and somewhere mid-size. But I'm not really interested in starting my own business. My parents run a restaurant and it takes a lot of time and effort. And I'm not sure if I have that in me, at least not right away.
And so knowing that, how do you think USC classes will contribute to that goal?
I think for computer science, USC has a pretty good program for it. They do a lot of just kind of teaching you the basics, but it is a little frustrating sometimes because some of the classes definitely feel like too much busy work that it won't really be applicable to like the workforce. Like common thing I hear when I talk to like people in the industry is usually that like school is like 10% maybe of what they actually end up doing. Like the other 90% they just learn on the job. / every company does things differently, and so you're going to have to learn to adapt to wherever you go. But I think USC still does provide a pretty solid foundation by kind of some of the busy work that they put you through occasionally.
For sure. And speaking of busy work, what was the most challenging part of transferring for you?
For me, it was definitely like trying to get connected. When I first got to USC, it was just overwhelming. Like it's very different from like community college, where people sometimes at community college are just like they're there and they know they're gonna leave, or they're there and they don't know what they want to do, and so they're there for a long time. But I was definitely the latter category for a little bit before I realized where I wanted to go. Once I did, I was just like, I was just seeing full steam ahead, just trying to get out, you know? So when I got to USC, everyone's so involved involved. Like I know people who are like on e-boards of like 2 or 3 different organizations and things like that. And I'm just like, I don't think I have the time or energy to really like do that, but I still want to make friends and things like that. But everyone is doing so much. So it's like no one has free time. So the hardest part really was making friends. I actually had an alumni reach out to me who was like a friend of a friend who told me about like the sorority I'm in, which is like the STEM sorority / sorority supporting women in STEM. And yeah, so I found like a good group of friends there, but it still was challenging like acclimating to like the difference in workload, especially. Community college is very different from like a rigorous university where suddenly I found myself like actually having to pay attention to my deadlines and applying myself to my work for the first time in a long time.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, like in terms of people doing too many things. Because I think, at least for me, sometimes when we transferred in, definitely experienced challenges in how the university communicates resources. And I know a common one for people is just the sheer amount of resources, and just finding a way to prioritize and filter through that is a challenge. And so I'm curious to know what communication challenges you faced when you transferred into USC, and maybe if you could touch on what you wish that TSC as a student organization could have done better for you when you transferred in.
So as far as communications wise goes, USC really barrages you with like emails. So many emails. I remember like being amazed that like if I didn't check my email in a day, I had like 30 unread emails, especially when you first transfer, because they're just sending you information and so much of it in the same way that it's very easy to lose track of what it is that you're looking for, right? So it just became a job of like every day I had to sit down for like half an hour, read through the emails, kind of like open them, check to see if there's anything relevant to me in it, and then delete, and just keep doing that every single day for like the first like month, it felt like, when I first got here. I think the one thing I did do was like I knew I needed a work study job to kind of like help supplement my income. And so I managed to get a job at the Viterbi Career Center. And I did that for about a year and a half, which was really helpful because that at least like gave me an easy line into like some of the resources USC provides without kind of like the overwhelming, like just reading through the hundreds of emails I've sent, you know? As far as TSA goes, I remember hearing about it, but they would always meet at a time that like wasn't available to me, or like because I commute, I was not always willing to be like, okay, well, my class ends at 2, meetings at like 6 or 7. I don't have anywhere to go in those 4 hours, and I don't always have like the library's crowded sometimes, or like there's just no real study space anywhere that I could just go and hang out in, you know? And I didn't really have friends to hang out with, so it was kind of like, all right, I wish I could have gotten more involved in the transfer student community, but it was just not really, it wasn't convenient, I guess, and so I didn't really interact as much with other transfers. The transfers I did meet were all people that I just happened to meet through my classes or through other events that weren't even related to transfer student community. I wish I had an easier way to like access the community and resources that TSA might provide.
Especially now with everything being online, that's really forced us as a student organization to think about the resources that we're making. And I definitely think that anything online, even when going back to normal, is great for people like you said, who have to commute and might not have, you know, the free time to physically be present, but might have the free time to listen to a podcast or read an email or, you know, see something online that is of benefit to you. So yeah, interesting that you mentioned that. What did you feel made you stand out in the application?
I think the biggest point I drove home was the fact that like I'm a non-traditional student. Like I am about to turn 28 or something. Most people wouldn't guess that. I spent a lot of time helping my parents at their restaurant when they opened back in 2013, 2012, I forget. A couple of years just basically working at a restaurant, doing my own thing for a while, spending time just kind of like trying to figure out what I wanted, right? There was a whole lackadaisical period I had of like going to community college, taking a bunch of random classes, which filled up all my units, and did not really know what I wanted to do for a while. But when I had a professor that was really helpful when I was at community college, he was the one that taught the computer science classes, and he really pushed to like, you know, get me more involved with like his side project to like help tutor other students and things like that. So for me, I think it was having someone that encouraged me and pushed me to kind of like be a better version of myself, and like realizing that like, you know, I can do more than what people expect of me. You know, it was like things like having like the counselor at my community college tell me like, why are you pursuing programming? Like, no, you're not really fit for it, right? Especially because like I was behind on my math at the time, and it's like a math heavy course, and I'm like, I'm not bad at math, I just was lazy. And so it's a bit of a like proving yourself to others and knowing that I have the ability to kind of shape my own future. And I think being able to communicate that through my college essays was a huge part in like me being accepted here at USC.
Oh, awesome. What benefit is there in being a transfer student, and what lessons from this experience do you think you could take with you into the future?
I think as a transfer student, like I had the time to kind of spend at like community college or elsewhere, figure out what I wanted to do rather than paying like the 60K tuition a year to go to a university, whether it was a USC or like a UC or any of the other 4U universities. Having the time to kind of like refocus myself and learn more about what I wanted to do rather than jumping straight into university really helped for me. It made me that much more sure of what I want to do. I still have days where I'm like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through all this suffering? At the same time, I'm also like, I really do enjoy the work though, the problem solving aspects of it and things like that, where it's like when it comes down to it, the core of what I'm doing is just solving problems using programming. And so I like the fact that I had the time to kind of find that realization.
And I guess like the lessons that you've sort of learned from this experience, do you think those skills or just that experience is transferable into other avenues of your life?
Definitely. I think being sure of yourself and like knowing where you want to go will definitely help like shape where you end up. It means that you kind of waste less time trying to figure out that process. Like I know too many people, my friends from when I graduated high school who end up going to school right away, end up spending like 6 years at a 4U university, switching majors like 4 or 5 times because they weren't sure what they wanted to do, and then like leaving with a degree that they didn't even want in the first place, and then now still like jumping from job to job trying to figure out what they want to do. So I think giving yourself the time and space to figure that out before you really jump into like a serious, rigorous university really helps, so that like when you leave university, you don't feel like you're leaving with a degree that you didn't really want in the first place.
No, it's definitely helpful for someone to know. And so you definitely have, I would think, more life experience than most of the people that I've talked to by virtue of just being older. And so, I mean, knowing what you know now, if you could go back in time and give a younger Sylvia advice, what would you tell her?
I honestly wouldn't have pictured myself in high school where I am now. I didn't think I was made out to be a programmer. I didn't think I had the ability to. I think the biggest thing I would tell myself would be like, don't be afraid to try new things. Don't just stay with your friends or in your bubble just because it's comforting, but be willing to try things that you didn't think you'd try because you didn't think you'd be good enough. I think there's a lot of insecurity sometimes, in like, especially for younger students, where they're like, I know at least one girl personally who was like, yeah, I'm just getting my degree because my parents are both electrical engineers, and so I just chose this as a result. And I think it's okay that like you have other interests, or that you also explore those interests, even if you feel obligated to do what you're doing now. I think it's important to have a passion or have something else you're interested in that, you know, like sure, like people might say like won't earn you anything, right? I'm lucky because like what I'm interested in is like kind of a lucrative field at this point. But to be not afraid to push yourself to try things that are hard, or be afraid of things because they appear to be difficult.
The challenges are the ones that you'll learn the most from.
Yeah.
So don't be scared to approach those.
Yeah. No, I definitely have a few like things of note when I was transferring. I did visit USC once to like attend like a transfer info session on like a general rundown, like what you should be doing, like what paperwork you need to get together. It was very like logistical in nature and not so much of like, so what exactly are you guys looking for in a student? Like, how do I get accepted, right? And the answer was always like, oh, we look at you holistically, just, you know, right to your best ability, just, you know, tell us who you are as a person. And so it was a little intimidating because I was like, okay, well, I have no way of gauging this. I didn't have any like community to talk to about like, oh, like how did you guys write or anything? I just ended up having to like a friend proofread my stuff and just be like, all right, cool, I'll just send it in, just call it good. And then luckily enough, I still made it in. But I wish there was also some more information about like, I didn't know anything about like articulation agreements. Like that was something that like was new to me, and was like, oh, okay, so like a lot of schools already have articulation agreements about like how their classes transfer over. And I didn't know about it beforehand. I just kind of came in and was like, oh, I still had to spend 3 years at USC because none of my core major classes were transferable courses from my community college. So that was definitely like a little bit of a slap in the face, where I realized, oh no, I had to spend 3 years in school when I thought I only had 2 more left. So I really wish there was a lot more communication about kind of like some of those like nitty gritty details that you might not think about initially when you transfer over, and then you get here and suddenly you're like, oh no, what did I get myself into? Am I gonna be okay? So I don't know, maybe some kind of like transfer outreach would be really nice, of like if potential transfer students were interested or attended these events, had like a way of also contacting like other students that have transferred and their experiences. I just found it was hard to find information about it because I felt like back then, especially, still wasn't that much of a transfer student community present online or anywhere. So when you Google it, you just go to USC's like very basic page about, oh yeah, as a trans student, here's just what you need to do, and that's it.
Right, yeah, and it's not tailored to you, to your situation. I mean, there's blanket information on there, but it doesn't tell you, you know, from what you've studied and where you're coming from, what you should do. So I think, like you said, having someone that's been in the same position that can talk to what you're going through, yeah, super helpful.
I think that's basically all I really had in mind when I was thinking about what to say as far as tips go, is like definitely get the information, but you have to like, it almost felt like you had to fight for it.
Well, I mean, I think that's very characteristic of Trojans, is fighting for what they believe in, fighting for what they want. So it's almost destiny that you had to go through a bit of trials and tribulations in getting here. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today and having a chat with me, and especially someone that's in your unique position of having a little bit more experience behind you and I guess different perspective, especially being in computer science as a girl. I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun. Thank you for reaching out. I'd be interested to hear more about like where this goes
The
and
transfer
other
student
things.
experience.
The transfer student
The
experience.
transfer student experience.